Okay, is my voice volume okay to work without a mic? Is okay? Good. I don't really like to be, standing over here the whole time. I tend to walk around a little bit. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for letting me talk about what I think is a very interesting and very important topic. And that is the issue of high-frequency vocabulary and trying to help second language learners to get proficient in English as quickly as we can. And I think that vocabulary, especially high-frequency vocabulary, is one of those keys. And there's lots of different vocabulary lists out there. Some of them are very well known, some that are lesser known. I'd like to introduce to you today an update of a very well known list and some of the resources that we've put together to try and make that list useful for you. There's no such thing as a perfect vocabulary list, but basically the idea behind this project was to make something that's as useful as possible for language learners and for teachers to help them to get the students to get proficient in English as quickly as possible. I've done, even though I'm not a corpus linguist, I'm more a vocabulary guy than a corpus linguist, but that has, because I'm so into vocabulary learning and teaching, that's brought me into corpus linguistics quite often. And I've done quite a few corpus development projects. One was for a list of business words, high-frequency business English terms that was used by an NHK TV show called Ego Shabere Naito. Whoa, this is on a timer, isn't it? I didn't touch anything. One was a business list for an NHK TV show. One is, I think you've probably seen at this conference, English Central is a really cool project that has a corpus of authentic videos, more than 10,000 videos, and we made a corpus out of that and have created some really interesting word lists from that. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the new general service list, which was based on full access and full permission from Cambridge University Press to their Cambridge English corpus, which is about a 2 billion word corpus. And we had some really nice tools that allowed us to analyze that. We've also got a new academic word list that we've already got the list developed, but it's just not, the publication is not out there yet, but this is just around the corner, and also some TOEIC vocabulary study lists as well. So it's really interesting. I think corpus linguistics is an interesting area, and if you want good vocabulary lists, you always have to be working with corpora. And so we'll probably be talking about those two kind of interchangeably. And these are some of the, I'm also very interested in technology. And these are some of the many vocabulary projects that I've been working on that sort of meld vocabulary teaching, vocabulary analysis, vocabulary learning, and online tools. So you'll probably see some of these around. But what I want to, let's see how this is going to come up. This is not coming up at all. I'll have to work over here. My PowerPoint is frozen. Hold on a second. Let's see, is that going to work? Okay, give me a second here. This is not working very well, is it? Okay, well, we'll come to this slide in a minute. Basically, the previous slide, basically it was just a visual representation of the importance of frequency. And the main point of that slide was basically that English language is a very, very large language. There's, if you're counting just word families, there's, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, which is the largest dictionary that you can buy right now, there's about 600,000 word families in the English language. That's a huge, huge number of words. But actually, native speakers of English only use a very small subsection of those words. Out of 600,000 words, average native speaker is only, college-educated native speaker of English is only using about 25,000 words. 25,000 out of 600,000, right? So that means that certain words are more important than others, and that's exactly what the field of corpus linguistics is identifying which of those words are the most important ones. Now, out of those, if we take the 25,000, if we say these are the 25,000 that native speakers know, of those 25,000, there are actually words that are very important within those 25,000 words. And if we were to just take the 2,000 or 3,000 most frequent words of the English language, those 2,000 or 3,000 words would cover more than 80% of all of the words that you would ever meet if you open any book or newspaper or magazine. So 2,000 or 3,000 out of 600,000, right? So as a second language learner of English, or as a second language teacher of English, you've got 600,000 choices of words to teach. Which ones are you going to teach? The 597,000 that they're only going to meet 20% of the time, or the 2,000 that they're going to meet almost every day of their lives, right? And so this is really, why I got into the area of vocabulary acquisition research. I took some courses with Paul Nation very early on and realized, both how important these words were and how important it was to help our students to learn them, and develop teaching methods and teaching tools to help them to master it quickly. Now, I've been in Japan for about 26, 27 years and spent a lot of that time looking at the problems of vocabulary acquisition in Japan. It is also very closely connected with the problems of reading skills development in Japan. And what we see is a very strong negative effect of test English. It's like we call it backwash effect. And what you see is the first couple of thousand words of English, and I'm going to turn this light off now to make it, is that a little easier to see? Yes, okay. So the first 5,000 words of English actually takes you from about 80% up to 95%. So if you know these first 5,000 HFW, high frequency words, if you know these first 5,000, you're 95% of the way of all the words that you need to know. But the problem is that Japanese junior and senior high school students, when they're in required English classes in junior and senior high schools, they're working with ministry-approved textbooks that actually are way, way above their level. The difficulty of the text is very hard, and the difficulty of the vocabulary is very hard. So what you see is students in high school in Japan are studying words like torment, emigrate, abstain, digress, exasperate. Very, very low frequency words, all the way up to like 84,000, at the expense of studying high frequency words like ace or bid or sum. They know these words before they know these words. This is a real problem because these are the words, these first 5,000 words are the ones that actually help them to be fluent in English. If they want to be able to read English and understand it, if they want to be able to listen to English and understand it, they need those first several thousand words, but they're studying these words before these. You know where I got those words? Those words are from chapter 1 of the best-selling college preparation book for vocabulary. And this is what high school students are studying. They're studying this and not this, and that's a big problem. So, and this, as I said, this is very closely connected with the problem of readability of text. We talk about crashing, and we talk about comprehensible input, and we talk about I+1. We say that, if a student's level is here, the text needs to be here. It needs to be very close to their level. But what does that mean? What gap is, how do we measure I+1 in Krashen's terms? What percentage of the words on the text do you need to be able to understand? Now, if you knew the first 2,000 words of English, if you knew the first 1,000 words of English, I'm sorry, if you knew the first 1,000 most frequent words of English, you'd get about 75% coverage of a text. We always tell our students, please don't use a dictionary. Please guess from context, right? Here's, 75% of the words, 1,000 most high frequency words of English. Can you guess from context? It's pretty hard, right? 75% is not enough. If you double that again and you say, okay, my students know the first 2,000 most frequent words of English, that might bring them up to a maximum of about 85% coverage. But even at 85%, you can see there's still an awful lot of blanks, and it's still quite difficult to guess from context. Before I said 5,000 and 95%, right? The reason is this. Look at how different the text looks at 95%. When you get to 95%, there are very, very few blanks, and it becomes easier to comprehend the text with or without guessing from context. Very often you can understand a text skipping over the difficult words if you have 95 or greater. A lot of Paul Nation's research in recent years has been saying that even 95% is not enough, that we need 97, 98, 99%. But the problem is that students are nowhere near 95, 97, 98%. And this is why we need a good list of high frequency words to help them get there. So below 80%, reading is almost impossible. At 95%, this is the minimum level where they can really be reading without the help of dictionaries. So we need to get them to this 95% level as quickly as possible. And this is sort of the prelude to starting to talk about the new GSL. So the old GSL, I'll give you, actually what I should do is probably go to the next slide. This is the first time to give this presentation, so I'm getting the order a little bit wrong. But maybe before I talk about the new GSL, I should just very briefly introduce the old GSL. The old GSL was published in 1953. The chief author was Michael West, but there were many other famous scholars involved in this. It was developed over actually a 20 or 30 year period with a lot of support from the Carnegie Foundation. And it was first published in 1936 as the Interim Report on Vocabulary Selection. And over a period of 10 or 20 years, they had meetings and discussions and debates about which words should go in and which words should come out. And eventually it was published in 1953 as the GSL. The purpose of the GSL, the reason they created and the purpose of the General Service List was to create a list of high-frequency words that is useful for second language learners of English. And so there were both, I'm not sure if I have it here, this list, it combined both objective criteria, which means word frequency, which is corpus linguistics, but it also combined subjective criteria, which means teacher intuition, to develop the list. So the starting point was corpus linguistics. The starting point was frequency. But on top of that, because they were thinking about what was useful and important for second language learners, they had to sometimes pull out words that were frequent but maybe not that useful for second language learners, and actually pop in some other ones. And so this was a very important objective of the original GSL, and we've tried to follow many of those same objectives. In addition to West, there was Thorndike, Horn, Harold Palmer, who's quite famous in Japan. Many famous linguists were involved in this project. And it was based on, the original 1936 list was based on a 2.5 million word corpus, which in its day was considered an extraordinary work because they didn't have computers. So there was no scanning involved, there was no computers involved. This was a hand-collected and collated and analyzed corpus of 2.5 million words. And by 1953, it was increased to 5 million words. So it was very large by the day, but very small by modern standards. There were several different versions of the General Service List, but the one that most people are using right now, there's about 2,200 words in the list, and those 2,200 words give about 80% coverage. It depends on the text, but plus minus 1 or 2 points, it gives about 80% coverage for general texts. An important point, which we'll come back to later, is that when you're creating a word list, you have to have a definition of what is a word. And I think West was very clear that they didn't define what is a word clearly. It wasn't always a word family, it wasn't always a lemma, but they said, literally, he says, no attempt has been made to be rigidly consistent in the method used for displaying the words. Each word has been treated as a separate problem, and the sole aim has been clearness. I mean, it was very rigorous work, but they were quite flexible in what they defined a word was. And we've tried to be a little bit more clear about that in our new general service list. So the goals of the new general service list, the goal of our project, what we were trying to accomplish, number one, was to update and actually to greatly expand the size of the corpus used. In the end, we started with about a 2 billion word corpus, and we whittled it down after thinking of various criteria. We whittled it down to about 273 million. And so this 273 million word corpus actually is about 100 times larger than the original GSL. And so the larger the corpus, the stronger claims you can make in some ways. And so this was one of the goals. The second goal was to create a new general service list of the most important high-frequency words, which gives the highest possible coverage with the fewest possible words. So one of the questions, and I should mention, I haven't mentioned their names yet, but the general service list was not done only by me. I had two colleagues, Dr. Brent Culligan and Joe Phillips, both also based in Japan. And the three of us together, one of the things that we often talked about and actually eventually led to this project is we wondered if we could make a better list, if we could create higher than 80% coverage with less than, with a lower number of words. We're thinking about efficiency. It's even 2,000, even 3,000, that's a huge number of words for our students to master. So the idea was how quickly can we get those students as close to 95% as possible. And so one of our goals was to create a better mousetrap, have a higher coverage with fewer words, and I think we succeeded in that. And we wanted to make a clearer definition of what constitutes a word, so we used a lemmatized approach, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And again, number 4 is to be a starting point for discussion among interested scholars and teachers with the goal of updating and revising. So very much in the same way that West published the interim list in 1936 and spent a few years talking with colleagues around the world and trying to improve the list. So too, what we've done is we've published the new general service list a few months ago, but we're publishing it as an interim list and putting it out there, putting all the data out there, putting all the words out there, and trying to get as much feedback as possible, and over the next coming few years, basically try to improve the list further so that it's eventually as good as possible. Okay, so here's, this is some slide shots of the old general service list. I think the best way to, if you want to learn about the original general service list, a good starting point is just to go to Wikipedia, because Wikipedia will give you a nice, concise definition of what the general service is, who the people were that were working on it, and actually some links to several different websites that give you various forms of the general service list. One of the co-authors of the new general service list, Brent Culligan, was actually involved about 10 years ago in updating the GSL to the version that has 2,200 words. And this is the web page that's devoted to that version. So you can, if you just go to this web link or just do a search for general service list, you'll be able to find these pages. Now the general service list was actually put together with another list. They're often associated. There are two word lists that are associated together. One is the general service list, one is the academic word list. How many of you are familiar with the academic word list? This is a list that was done by Dr. Avril Coxhead and published in the year 2000. It was actually her master's dissertation underneath Paul Nation. And what she was trying to do was to create a list of a small number of academic words that would give high coverage within an academic setting. And these two lists are often put together, and analysis tools and editing tools are often putting the GSL and AWL together. And it's one of the reasons why my colleagues and I, when we created the new general service list, felt that we needed a new academic word list as well. And both of those, we're working on right now. But these are both very well known and very good lists, which you should definitely take a look at. If you are interested, if you need copies of anything related to the old lists, I made a few cheap iPhone apps for the old GSL and the old AWL, flashcard apps. And when I made the flashcard apps, I had to create words, definitions, parts of speech, sound files, a whole bunch of stuff for both of those lists. And I'm very happy to share the lists and the definitions and everything if you need them. So please, send me an email and I'll be glad to send you those files. Let me just briefly show you some examples from the original General Service List. One of the criticisms of the original General Service List that many of us have heard is that it's too old. It was published in 1953, but it was based on a corpus that was collected in the 30s. And so words like, on the General Service List, you don't find words like a cell phone or internet or television or things that are in our modern life every day. And so that's one of the criticisms. And there's merits to that criticism, and some of them are not, I think we can discount. But basically it's something we very often hear. And what I tried to do was to go through the General Service List and take a look and see if there were, examples of words that maybe seem not as modern or sort of misplaced in a modern list of vocabulary words. This is open to debate. I just put these up here. But for example, there seemed to be an awful lot of words related to agriculture: plow and mill and spade and cultivator. This is in the top 2,000 words, most important words for language learners. Maybe in the 1930s, a lot of the texts that they were looking at talked about agricultural issues more often. I don't know. But we see an awful lot of those. There seemed to be an awful lot about religion in these first 2,000 words of the General Service List: kingdom, God, devil, mercy, bless, fellowship, preach, sacred, worship, holy, pray, heaven, grace, pupil, church, Lord. That's a lot of religion words in a what's that?
Praise God. I said praise God.
Yeah, praise God, right? No, and I go to church, but I'm not sure that I would make these core words to teach students for the text that they're normally going to be exposed to, as a core vocabulary. And so it's not even really a criticism, but it's just saying that perhaps this 2.5 million word corpus they had, the text that were inside of it, the output, reflects the input. I actually would love to jump ahead here, this slide. Let me just come. Do you remember this slide from my Pechakucha last night? This slide is actually exactly the point I'm talking about. The output in the General Service List, the words that have come out, are a reflection of the texts that went in. And one of the criticisms that might be made is that whoa, it's going forward again. One of the criticisms that might be made is that the texts that went in to create the original General Service List are now a little bit dated. And so we need a more modern corpus, and if we have a more modern corpus, then the output will also be more modern. And so, the religion words, the sea travel words, agriculture words, words like chimney and coal and gaiety, and there just seems to be a few in there that I have question marks about. I mean, what do you think?
I think it's all context sensitive, and it's a huge question.
Yeah.
Every 5 years, you're going to need a reboot on it.
Well, and that's that's a little bit also another thing I mentioned very, very quickly last night was this idea of a diachronic corpus. And COCA, the Corpus of Contemporary American English, is an example of a diachronic corpus where they put in each year, like the year 2012, there'll be 5 million words added, and 2013, another 5 million words added. So we need a way to be able to update corpora and to update word lists. So I think that's a very good point. So what we did with this corpus is we out of the 2 billion words, our starting point, we sampled a lot of different genres that were available within the Cambridge International Corpus, and we came up with a list of about 1.2 billion words. And we sampled newspapers, academic subcorpora. They have a really large learner corpus of English, fiction journals, and so on. Lots and lots of different corpora. But as we did this and we got the output from this initial attempt to create a new GSL, we saw immediately that there were a few problems with this list. And one of those problems is that the newspaper subsection was far too large. If you look, let's see, does this button work? So you can see the newspaper is 748 million words, and you can see most of the other ones are only like 20, 30, 40 million words. So the frequencies were being dominated by the overpresence of newspapers in the corpus. And the newspaper subsection in the CEC actually had a very strong bias towards financial terms. So a lot of the newspapers in the CEC were financial newspapers. And we didn't feel that this was really helpful for learners of English who were trying to master general English. You know, if you're going on to be a businessman or a businesswoman, sure. But this wasn't the place for it. Also, the academic subcorpus of the CEC was not really needed to the needs of general English as well. So this academic subcorpus as well, we actually decreased the size. We decreased the size of the newspaper corpus and deleted the academic corpus. And we ended up using the academic corpus as part of our research on creating a new academic word list later. That was a separate project. So what we ended up with was a much, much more balanced corpus. And you can see that you know, the range is about 11 million words to 40 million words. And that's still a big gap, right? 11 million and 40 million is a big gap, but there are actually statistical procedures that can be used to correct for differences in corpus size at this level. When it's 11 million versus 800 million, that's not within the range of what statistical correction allows for. Okay, so that's what we started with. Then after that, the next steps that we took were doing things like removing proper nouns. We did things like removing numbers and days of the week and months of the year. Those are things, of course, that can be studied later, but we pulled them out because they weren't occurring normally within the frequency band. Some of them were within the first 2,000, some of them were outside, and we didn't think that was good. This is exactly what the GSL does as well, by the way. And as I said, we used statistical procedures to combine the frequencies. And then we actually had a few meetings with Paul Nation and got some analysis from Paul. We got some handwritten notes from Paul. We had a few meetings with him and tried to improve the list based on his input as well. Okay, so comparing the GSL and the new GSL. The GSL takes a word family approach. The new GSL takes a lemmatized approach. And so there are a little bit differences in terms of what the output looks like, you know, based on that. So that's actually, red was a bad color to pick, wasn't it? I'll change that before my next presentation. So if you look at it, it's a 10-word sentence, to be or not to be. That is the question. And that 10 words means there's 10 tokens. Each word represents a token. So 10 tokens, there they are right there. It's all the words of the sentence. But there's only 8 types. And so B occurs twice. I think B occurs twice. So that brings it down to 8. Is that it? And so B and is are counted separately. But when we lemmatize it, B and is are counted together as part of the same lemma. So that brings it down to 7. So we're pulling together things that are similar in the same word list and not counting them twice. And so what you see is the word when you count it that way, be, and is, that represents 30% of the words in the sentence. That's 30% coverage. And 2 occurs twice, and so on. So the assumption, though, in the word family approach, if we look at what the GSL does, and what a lot of people who talk about word families, they assume that if you know the head word, except, that means automatically that you know acceptability, acceptable, unacceptable, acceptance, accepted, accepting, and accepts. Okay, so that's the assumption in a word family approach, is that if you know the head word, you know all of the associated forms. Okay, but are they? That's the question. And there's good research, and this was the doctoral research of Brent Culligan, my partner in creating this list. And he used a branch of statistics known as item response theory, and he looked at word difficulty. And he looked at word difficulty for thousands of Japanese students and found that, in fact, just because you knew the word accept didn't necessarily mean that you knew all of these other forms. So we have the difficulty of accept was quite easy. It's a minus 0.29. Acceptable, minus 0.5, unacceptable minus 0.2, and acceptance plus 0.5. This is actually a huge difference. Basically what this is saying is that acceptance is considered by Japanese students' brains to be a different word than accept. It's learned at a much later stage. They recognize it as a word, they recognize the meaning much later than when they learn the word accept. And so we sort of felt that we needed to separate some of these words and treat them as different words based on their difficulty. And so the word family approach there, I'm not going to go through this because we're running a little bit short on time, but there are 7 levels in the Bauer and Nation word family approach. And you can see level 1, level 2, level 3. It's talking about different levels of affixes. Level 5, it was too much. It took a whole slide to show all of the different affixes in level 5 of Nation and Bauer. And then level 6 and level 7. But as I said in one of the earlier slides, even if we talk about a word family approach, the original GSL actually wasn't a 100% pure word family approach. As West himself said, that they weren't entirely consistent about what they defined in terms of what a word was. And this is what Bauman and Culligan did in their, I think it was 1995 update of the list, is they tried to normalize the general service list into a word family approach, and that's how they came up with 2,200 words. The original GSL, I think, was only about 1,900 words, but when you normalize it for word families, it jumped up to about 2,200. And if you go and look at some of the online programs that Paul Nation has made and Tom Cobb has made, like such as Range and Vocab Profile, you will see the general service list all the way up to the level 6 with affixes. So that's this level. Now, what we've done with the new GSL is what is called a modified lexeme approach. And what we're doing is we're taking all of the inflected forms for all parts of speech plus the plural of the gerund. And what we've also tried to do, because of the nature of the corpus and the nature of the learners who are using the list, is we're including both British and American spellings. So going back to accept, in the new general service list, accept would be one entry, and the other lemmas that would be considered connected with accept is accepts, accepted, accepting, and acceptings. It's a strange word, but it actually needs to be done for looking at older texts. And the word acceptable would be a different entry because it has a different difficulty, and that would be also with acceptables. Again, this is also what Avril Coxhead did as well. When you have a corpus that analyzes old texts, sometimes you get these weird ones, and they have to be considered together. So for example, another word, paint, would also include paints, painted, painting, and paintings. Now this is sort of the result. The result of all of this discussion and all of this analysis is that basically the new general service list is providing about 6% more coverage with actually fewer words than the original general service list. So if you look at number of word families, the original GSL was 1964. We're at 2368. It looks like we have more words, but when you regularize and make both of them lemmatized, actually the old general service list is about 3,600, and we're at about 28. So in terms of lemmatized lists, we're actually the list that we have is actually giving a lot more coverage for quite a fewer amount of words. And so if you, what we've done is we've created a little website, and the purpose, basically the purpose of this list The purpose of this general service list is not just to publish papers about it. It's not just to, have an article or get a promotion about it. The purpose, this list was created, the main reason was to get it in the hands of as many teachers, as many students as possible in as many formats that is practical to help teachers and students to make use of this list. So if you go to the newgeneralservicelist.org, it's only been up for about 2 or 3 months, so there's not much there yet, but I'll show you a couple of things that are up and a couple of things that are around the corner. So what you'll see, first off, is new GSL articles, and there's I think we've got about 4 articles out about the new general service list now, and you can download all of them and look at them. So that would be the first thing. The second thing would be that we've made the list downloadable in several different formats. So if one of the formats is just as a headword list, because a lot of people still like to use headwords, and so you can download it as a headword list, but we also have it downloadable as a lemmatized list. And so this is where, okay, so you see the word abstract, and then next to it is abstracts, abstracted, abstracting, and so on. So it's downloadable as a lemmatized list. It's also, with the help of several friends, we've been able to get up a complete set of definitions for the new general service list. So it's about 2,800 words. We have 2,800 definitions in English up there already and downloadable, and we're just very close to having 2,800 definitions in Japanese as well. And then, as more people get involved and help, we hope to have the definitions in other languages as well. There's also, we don't have this up this week, but we're just cleaning up the last bits of the data analysis, and we're going to have it as a downloadable file, all of the exact figures and frequencies and sort of the statistical procedures we use to decide about words. So that'll be downloadable as well. We've also, with the help of Jeffrey Hanks, who I think is here at the conference. Are you in the room, Jeff? No? Oh, is it? Jeff was a real big help in getting the new general service list up on the Quizlet program. How many of you are familiar with Quizlet? A few. Okay, so 4 or 5. Quizlet is fantastic in my opinion. I've worked on a lot of different vocabulary learning software programs, but there's about 4 or 5 things that are great about Quizlet, but probably the most important one you should know is that Quizlet is free. So it's a great free website for vocabulary learning, and you can upload any list you want. And so with Jeff's help, we were able to upload the entire new GSL onto Quizlet right now. It's available in 50-word blocks, so you can assign a 50-word block to your students, and they can learn, any frequency band you want. This is Jeff's website. I mean, this is his account. So if you were to search for new general service list on Quizlet, you would see Jeff's information. But then I forgot where the button is, but you just click it, and it gets added to your account, and then it becomes yours. So it's really, really easy to use. And I wanted to put up just a couple of screenshots to actually show you, what Quizlet looks like. So, there's flashcards, so you have, regular flashcards for all of the words. Very clean interface. Yes?
5 minutes.
What? 5 minutes, thanks. Okay, we're almost done. That's good. There's like sort of a spelling practice game. Oh, she said 10 minutes.
Okay.
No? All right. No, I think it's 5 too. It's 45, right? Okay, you're right. Spelling games, spelling practice games for all of the words. There's a test program where it will give you different kinds of test questions. You can see that Charlie is messy, sloppy, unstylish, and unattractive. And if I write that, fortunately, I will get an incorrect answer. And it says that Charlie is frumpy. Or no, the correct word is frumpy. And so there's kind of nice little interactive games. There's a learn mode. It's just a slightly different way to interact with the words, and if you get it right or wrong, it gives you instant feedback. There's a scatter game where you have to make everything disappear, and so it just throws up a bunch of the words on the screen, like the words will be some tiles and the definition will be other tiles, and you have to pull them together. Kind of looks like that. And so, you know, nothing fancy, but it works, and it's nice, and it's free. And there's a space race game where the definition rolls across the bottom, and you have to type in the word as quickly as possible. So, you know, you see like persistent, not stopping, not giving up. And if it gets over to the other side before you type it in, it gives you, it says, no, you missed it, but it instantly gives you the word and the definition and asks you to type the word, which I think is really cool. So it's like a sort of instant feedback, instant practice. Word Engine, I just found out this morning, Word Engine is software I made about 7 or 8 years ago with somebody. And I'm not really working with them anymore, but the CEO of the company called me up and said, Charlie, oh, you got the new GSL. We'll make a word list for it. So, you know, it'll be up next week. So this is not a free one. This is like a paid service, but it's very, very good, and it's got really good testing. And the new GSL will be up there as well. It turns out, is anybody from Cambridge here? Can you hold up the books? There's a really cool series of books that just came out with Cambridge called In Focus. Book 1 and Book 2 teaches the new general service list both in the textbook and with online tools. And Book 3 is going to be teaching, which is not out yet, Book 3 is going to be teaching the new academic word list with in-text and online tools. So there's actually just a like I said, we're just trying to collect everything that we can, make as many tools available to you as possible. Rob Waring, can you stand up for a second? Rob and I have been working together for several years on trying to put together a website that promotes, a free website, I should say right off the bat, a free website that promotes extensive reading, extensive listening, and vocabulary learning directly from those readings and those listenings. And because that website, there's a lot of content on the website, but there's also a lot of really cool analytical and editing tools. And one of the first things that Rob kindly did was to, we have a tool called the Online Graded Text Editor. And what he did is he put onto the tool the new general service list. So you can now, on this tool, what you can do is you can pop in any text you want and instantly find out what kind of coverage you're getting from the new general service list for that text. So what I did here, just as an example, is I took from the Gutenberg Project, that's that website that has all the free books, I went and I looked for one of my favorite books when I was a kid, Huckleberry Finn. And I copied and pasted Huckleberry Finn into the OGTE, and with the new general service list, we're getting 89.81% coverage. So basically 90%, which is what we said. Even for one of the hardest texts that I know of, I don't know what you feel, but Moby Dick, do any of you think that that's a hard text to read? Even for Moby Dick, the OGT is providing 84.5% coverage. So this tool, the OGT tool, you know, obviously it's really helpful, and we're happy that it's there for the new general service list. But there's lots of word lists that you can use over here. And one of you know, right now I'm showing it to you as an analysis tool, but the real purpose of this tool is not analysis. This is an online graded text editor. And so this tool, the reason we created it is we created this for the needs of teachers and the needs of authors who want to either simplify texts to a certain level or to write original text up to or down to a certain level. And so what you can do with this is you can say, okay, I'm going to teach my students the new GSL, and I want a bunch of texts that they can understand at the 95% level. So what you could do is you could go, for example, to Huck Finn, and it's at 89%. So you need about another 5%. So you can take all of the out-of-level words, all of the red underline words, and you can start to try and rewrite in simpler English until you hit that 95% target. So this tool is basically designed to help you to write materials that are at your student's level, which is you know, a really important part of what we're trying to do here. So if you look at our website, this is the site that Rob and I have developed. There's just a ton of different tools. Another version of the online graded text editor is something we call Text Helper. And what you do here is you select your language. I selected Japanese. You select your level. I selected level 12 of the graded reader scale. And I just popped in a text, which was Huck Finn. And instantly what it does is it identifies all of the words out of your level and provides you with definitions for all of the words out of level, and then you just push a button and it adds it to a word list, for your own personalized word list, which you can use in all these kind of vocabulary flashcards and games that we've developed. So basically, now this is just a concentration game. And you can see it's based on spaced repetition, so we're getting them to repeat the learning of the words. But basically, the idea of the new GSL project was to create a list of words that would provide higher coverage with fewer words that are of use to second language learners, and then to create a website and a growing list of resources and tools to help teachers and students to make use of that list. So I hope you'll come to the site, I hope you'll give us feedback, and I hope that this will be of use to you somehow. So thank you very much.